Richician!
Hey YouTube, Dark Richician 84 here, and welcome to part 14, I think. God, I'm losing track now. Yeah, part 14. I don't know why I needed to check. So yeah, we are now talking about 2017. Now, by this point, another deck had actually been banned from Royals, which I completely forgot to mention, and that was Morphages, which is the most annoying, degenerate, bullshit, unfair pendulum deck in the game. And see, that's technically a compliment towards Pendulum Magician and Endymion. As annoying as they are, I'd much rather play against them than Morphages any day, because it just dragged out games. It made it so that nobody could play. So yeah, about halfway through 2016 they were banned. There was something else I wanted to mention at the start, but I've just completely forgotten what it was. But yeah, basically things started out with me finishing the favourite deck challenge. I played Rainbow Neos in a Raw Rumble, and I remember Melodious being played, which would prove to be a problem. But Rainbow News was able to overcome it, and I won that Royale. And I must point out that at this point in time, I've lost count of how many Raw Rumbles I've won with Dark Magician and Rainbow Neos. I've had more wins with them than any other deck I have. Sadly, my other two weren't successful. I had to play my Elemental Heroes in the first tournament of the year, and I didn't fare so well, unfortunately. I think I only won one match, and that was it, and I lost against Shadow Trains, which was a struggle. Then I lost against ABCs, because I was just dead drawing, and like all I could do. Well, the best play I did was make an absolute zero, but it does nothing against ABCs. I mean, even if it gets rid of a Dragon Buster, the opponent can still get round it and set up for another one. And I also lost against a Pendulum deck. Yeah, not the best run, unfortunately. And then, to finish off the challenge, I played my Dark Magician deck in a Raw Rumble, and then a 6-person Royale. Let's see. So we had me, we had Bailey using something, we had Express Gaming playing Dark Lords, we had Wyvern Watch also playing Dark Magician, I think. Wyvern Watch being a good friend who I first met back in 2016. I don't remember who else took part, but I do remember that I was the third to fall and finish fourth. Yeah, that wasn't the way I wanted to end that challenge, but oh well, what can you do? And yeah, I think from this point onwards, lots of shitty things just happened throughout the year, both in and out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Outside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, I was still struggling to find love, basically. Had more bad luck on plentyoffish.com, and even worse of all, my granddad had a stroke, and then almost 4 weeks later, he passed away. Sad times. And of course, unfortunately, there were a lot of shit moments throughout the year as well, Yu-Gi-Oh! Wise. 2017 just really wasn't a great year. Obviously not as bad as 2016 or 17, not by a long way, but still really shit. Starting with a couple of shitty tag team tournaments. So in the first one, I teamed up with Steve. I used Dark Richician, and he played Artifact Cosmo. And we just had a really bad run, which I feel was partially my fault, because like in the first 2 matches I made misplays and bad decisions. We lost against Infernoids and Volcanics in round 1. Really infuriating, losing against 2 fire decks I despise. Then we lost against Paleos and Phantom Knights, I think. Then we lost against Odd Eyes Magician and ABCs. But we did win the 4th and final round, though, which was against Synchrons and Crystons. But even though we did win 1 match, it wasn't enough to lift my spirits in any way. And I ended up quitting tournaments. And that was the 3rd time I did, because I was just getting really annoyed with the format and the meta, and just the way things went during that tag tournament. I had no intention of coming back to tournaments, but then a few weeks later, after some confidence building, I changed my mind and decided to give them another chance. Even though my return wasn't off to the best start, only won 2 out of 3 matches. The first 2 rounds were annoying. I lost against DDDs, which at that point had their structure deck, which gave them Cursed Siegfried, one of my most hated synchros in the game. And the opponent went first and ended on a board of Cursed Siegfried, Crystal Wing, and Hope Harbinger, and I just scooped. There was absolutely nothing I could do. I couldn't play through 3 negates. This is what I hate about competitive decks nowadays. Like, just anything really that does something that doesn't let anyone play. They just take forever to play out a turn, and then end on a board that just doesn't let you play. Then I lost the other one. Then I lost against Infernoids. It really wasn't great. First 2 rounds were just so shit, losing to decks that I don't like playing against. At least that was the case with DDDs. I'm not sure how I feel about them nowadays. Considering that Master Rule 4 and I guess 5 did hurt them. Then I lost against Cliffort, but I think I won the rest of my matches though, so that was okay. I had a bit more luck in the next tournament though, which was another skeleton character tournament. This was the 5th one we ever did actually, and one thing I forgot to mention about 2016 was I made another Yugi deck and another Jaden deck exclusively for these kinds of tournaments. I did play my Yugi character deck in the 3rd one we ever did, and actually topped, even though my first loss, I lost against Weber's 5, who was playing a Yuma deck, and he beat me by pure luck. That was a loss I'm still annoyed about to this day. So it was the 4-turn rule. I was ahead on life points. I was on 2,200 life points. He was on 21, and it was the last turn, and he top-decked Archer, which burnt my life points, had no monster effect negation, and his life points were higher. Can't believe that. Yeah, I said it. He got lucky. Like, if he drew into literally anything else, I would have won the match. And maybe things would have gone differently. But yeah, after that, in the 4th one, I made a separate Yugi deck and a separate Jaden deck, more designed for character tournaments, and I finished 2nd in that one, although it was a 4-person tournament because we couldn't get other people to attend. It was just me, Weber's 5, Alex and Joel. I defeated Joel, who I think was playing a Yusei deck. I beat Alex, who was playing his own unique version of a Kaiba deck, and I lost against Weber's 5, who was playing Blackwing, so Crow. So I did end up finishing 2nd, and that would be the best I ever did in one until the last one we ever did in March 2017. So going back to 2017, I used the other Jaden deck this time. So basically it was another Elemental Hero deck, only with cards I had to play, including Winged Karibo. I think there were only 6 of us playing. Me, Bailey, James, Express Gaming, Shieldwing David, and one other person, don't know who. So, yeah, in the first round I went up against Express Gaming, who was using Lunar Light, so Selena, or was it Serena? I can never remember which one it is. I remember this did go to a 3rd game, which was quite close. I managed to overpower a Leo Dancer with Escarida, helped out by Skyscraper. And in main phase 2, I special summoned Bubble Man in defence because it was the only card in my hand, and did say it loudly and clearly. So I ended. Then his turn, he made another Leo Dancer, and I was like, oh no, he's won. So yeah, literally all he needed to do was attack and destroy Escarida, do damage, use the effect to pop Bubble Man and attack for game, but instead he makes a really huge misplay which ends up costing in the game, and I feel bad about bringing this up because I don't think anyone wants misplays being brought up, really. But I kind of have to for the sake of the video. So he goes to attack into Leo Dancer. Leo Dancer attacks into Rescuridal, does damage, and then uses the second attack to destroy Bubble Man and end his turn. And I then drew into Miracle Fusion and brought out Shining Flare Wingman and destroyed Leo Dancer and won the match. Now, apparently the reason why he didn't use Leo Dancer's effect was because he apparently didn't know that Bubble Man was special summoned, even though I did say it was special summoned. But apparently what happened was his hearing aid picked up some background chatter instead of me saying special summon Bubble Man. So yeah, it was just really unfortunate, and yeah, I feel bad for winning that way. I never want to win games all because my opponent misplayed. Yeah, I prefer to beat them at their best, as anyone would. Yeah, it was just really unfortunate. So yeah, I got a win, even though I really shouldn't have won. And then the rest of the tournament was a breeze. I went up against Shieldwing David, who was borrowing Bailey's Evil Hero deck, modified exclusively for the tournament, and I managed to win against him with not many problems. And then in the last round I went up against James, who was playing a Marek deck. Now, in game 1, he brought out Ra, paid all but 100 of his life points, and attacked, but ran into a Fiendish Chain, which allowed me to literally take down Ra and the rest of his life points with any monster. I think someone said I would laugh if he runs into Magic Cylinder, or something along those lines. I don't remember much about game 2. I think there was a lava golem on the field, but I believe I fused it away to make Nova Master. Yeah, I won the match. And as a result, I won this skeleton character tournament, and at long last, after 9 years of trying and failing, I finally won a locals with Elemental Heroes, even though I really shouldn't have won and only did because of Express Gaming's misplay. But hey, while I do feel bad about that, at the same time I'm pleased that I achieved a goal that I was trying to do for 9 years straight. And yeah, a win's a win at the end of the day. And speaking of games with Express Gaming, it was around this time where we had a very memorable game, which he sometimes brings up every now and then, and that was when I played my Magnet Warriors against his Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon deck, and there were points where there was a point where I'd bring out Utopia the Lightning and attack over the Chaos Max, because I think that was my only out to it, and then he'd get out another one, Destroy Lightning, but I would use things like Digusto Emerald and Jar of Avarice to recycle my Utopia package, and get out Lightning again and just run it over. It was just great. it was assumed that it was my Utopia deck I was using, but no, it was actually Magnet Warriors, which I remember Marley being really puzzled about, and it's like, and it's like, how the hell are Magnet Warriors doing well? But hey, what can I say? Don't underestimate Magnet Warriors. I mean, with the support from the Yugi structure deck and the singular cards we got in King's Court and Battle of Chaos, Magnet Warriors are just better than ever, and a very strong deck. And just super consistent. Well, except for one game with them, which I'll get to later. Yeah, after that, I actually started doing a bit better with Dark Magician in tournaments again, despite one annoying game where I lost against Paleozoic Frog, even though I banished all 3 copies of Totally Arsehole with Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. I think that was the first time I ever got to use it, and banished all 3 toads, but somehow I still ended up losing. I can't for the life of me remember how, but yeah, that was just absolute bullshit. Like, seriously, fuck Paleos. But yeah, if that wasn't bad enough, this next tag team tournament was. So yeah, this time I was back teaming up with Express Gaming, and he was using Lunar Lights and I used Dark Magician, and yeah, this was by far the worst tag team tournament ever. Well, at least for me. We just lost all our games, and in every single one, like, our plays just got countered, and we just got steamrolled before we had a chance to go off, really. Like, my Eternal Soul kept being popped before I had a chance to use it, while Express Gaming just couldn't get out Leo Dancer once. Like, if he did, I think we would have done a lot better. And just to add insult to injury, my Dark Magician got banished twice that day. First by Necros of Trishula, one of my top 5 most hated rituals in the entire game, which should have been fucking banned ages ago. Like, screw Unicorn and the other card that got banned for a while. Trish should have gone, because fuck that cheap shot banished piece of shit. Yeah, it's a little bit salty. And then Dark Magician got banished again by Invocation, which and Invoked was another hated archetype that came into the game, like earlier that year. Shame, really, because it is a fusion-based archetype, which I usually like, and they're based off the Final Fantasy games. Now, I'm not a big Final Fantasy fan, but I've only ever played one Final Fantasy game, and that was Final Fantasy 11 Online, which I used to play on a lot with friends. And I did see the 2 movies. I watched Advent Children with one of my now exes, and I watched that movie that came out in 2001. Yeah, that's as far as my Final Fantasy past goes. I hate them because Mechaba exists. That's the main source of my hatred for that archetype. But Elysium and Invocation are fucking annoying. I mean, Invocation's just another cheap shot banish card as well, like banishing my monsters to make their fusions. Like, to me, that card is worse than Super Poly. Alright, fair enough, you can't negate Super Poly, but at least the materials go to the grave and you can get that monster back somehow and use it for something. And it's easier to bounce back from a Super Poly play, whereas Invocation just outright banishes them, and of course monsters that get banished are less accessible than any in the graveyard. Yeah, wasn't happy about that. I mean, I did eventually get to use Eternal Soul, but that was in the fourth and final round against Kieran, who I think was playing Crystons, I'm not sure, and another guy playing Zombies. But Eternal Soul only stayed on the field for like about 1 or 2 turns before it got popped. But yeah, it was just really annoying and just put me in a bad mood. And that made me end up quitting tournaments again, just because the meta really pissed me off, even though 3 of the decks we came across weren't even meta, like Cubics, Zombies and Crystons. Everything else was meta though, or at least I think Necros was still meta at the time, or I don't know, maybe not. It's hard to remember exactly. We are talking 6 years ago at this point. Not to mention that another annoying thing about that day was just messing up in a casual game I had with Shield Wing David. I used my Rainbow Dark Dragon against his Stall Wings, and this was the one and only time where he actually beat me in a match. Although there was this battle royal which me, him, Express Gaming and Gamer Central had back in 2015, where he won a battle royale somehow. I don't remember how he did it. It was either that or in 2016, I can't remember. But yeah, in terms of matches, this was the one and only time he won, but I'm not annoyed about the fact that I lost to him, but what annoyed me was the way I lost. Because in game 1, I made a misplay that cost me the game, and in game 2, I bricked. So here's the misplay. I mean, this is just a really annoying moment that I hate certain people bringing up, but for the sake of the series I'll bring it up just once. So there was a point in the duel where I activated Hand Destruction, and one of the cards I sent was Dark Hole, thinking I didn't need it. Boy, how wrong was I. And I wasn't playing Regeki in the deck, because obviously I didn't have any Regekis going spare, and well, it's never been an easy card to get. Well, maybe it's a bit easier nowadays, but it sure as hell wasn't back then. And yeah, Dark Hole was the next best thing. But this would ultimately end up costing me the game. So I ended up getting really low on cards. And I got stuck behind battle immune monsters, or it might have been just one, which was Spirit Reaper. I don't know. Either way, I was stuck behind something with battle immunity, and I just wasn't drawing anything that could help me get rid of it. And I thought, okay, my only hope is to activate Dark Hole, nuke the field, and special summon Rainbow Dark Dragon, power it up to the max, and attack the game. because fortunately I did manage to do some sufficient damage beforehand. In fact, when I had 2 cards left in my deck, I just decided to get it over with. I activated a Lure of Darkness in a bid to draw the Dark Hole. So I drew the last 2 cards in my deck, only to find it wasn't there. I was like, wait, what the fuck? Where's my Dark Hole? Like, I was just so confused and frantic, wondering where the hell it was. I was even like, I swear I do play Dark Hole in this deck. I didn't use it already, did I? I couldn't have done. Then I looked through my graveyard to see it was there, and wondered why it was there in the first place. In fact, by that point, I completely forgot that I sent it through hand destruction, which is something that got pointed out later on, and yeah, I was forced to scoop. And then, of course, in Game 2, I just bricked and got overwhelmed, especially by Bora. That was infuriating. And every now and then, a certain someone keeps bringing this match up, saying, oh, that was a great match and it was funny, but I'm like, no, it really wasn't. It was fucking bullshit. And I sure as hell don't appreciate it being brought up, or people laughing at my misfortune. Sometime after that, I had a similar game with Shield Wing David, where this time I was using my Arcana Knights. And even though I did get out Slifer the Sky Dragon, I got stalled behind battle immune monsters and got hit by a magic cylinder. And I was running low on cards. I went to Xyz summon Digusto Emerald just to recycle my cards, but the summon got negated by Solemn fucking Warning. So yeah, I was down to no cards, and it was implied that there was a magic cylinder face down. And Express Gaming said to David, so you've got 2 choices now of how to beat Richie, deck him out or use cylinder. But I just went, or I could just not give you the satisfaction and scoop up. I did win Game 2 though, and took it to a Game 3. So yeah, this was the one and only time that one of my matches with David went to a 3rd game, and I managed to win that with no problems either. And also, while this was going on, I did have success in Royal Rumbles, even though I had rotten luck in tournaments by that point. I won Royal Rumbles with Destiny Heroes, Vampires, finally. Generic Warriors, and even Sky Scourge Karibo. And I think I got lucky with that one. Sorry, losing my voice. But yeah, after quitting tournaments again round about that time, I initially just didn't want to come back to them, but it was actually thanks to Derek that I came back to them. Remember in an earlier part where I mentioned that he did a one-off Fairies Elite tournament? Well, that's what he did, like shortly after Easter, and I entered just to help support the event, but only 3 other people entered: Steve-O, Carlton and Sean. Although, rather annoyingly, all of them were playing decks that I really fucking hate and don't like playing against. I mean, Steve-O was playing True King Dinosaurs, Carlton had Infernoids, and Sean had Mermails. Yeah, that's something maybe I should have mentioned first. By this point, Ancient Gears and Dinosaurs had another structure deck by that point. And yeah, this was when Ultimate Conductor Tyranno by itself just ruined Dinosaurs for me. Like I said before, generic Dinosaurs were a really fun deck that I loved playing back in the day, and I initially planned to rebuild them for the 15th anniversary since I got into the game, but when I saw what Ultimate Conductor, Lost World and Lithosogen were capable of, that just outright put me off. Like, those 3 cards just made me outright hate them. Like, Ultimate Conductor is one of the most bullshit boss monsters in the game, which is just far too disruptive and difficult to play around unless you have Regeki and Battle Traps. Lost World made effects that target practically useless, whereas Lithosogen was an annoying cheap shot banish card which banished 3 monsters from my extra deck. And it was really annoying when people kept doing it to me, including Express Gaming, even though he said he only did it to get rid of Utopia the Lightning. But I'm like, yeah, sure, any excuse to justify this bullshit. But anyway, back to this tournament though. I wasn't quite sure how the scoring system worked here, but we did play each other multiple times. I did lose at least 1 match against all of them, but I did get a match win against Steve-O and Sean later on, not against Carlton though. And then, some time afterwards, I decided to give tournaments another chance and come back to them. And I do okay in them, I guess. At least I think I did okay in the first one I came back to. Yeah, at this point we were about 2 months away from the start of Master Rule 4, which is something I forgot to mention earlier. Yeah, Master Rule 4 and Link Monsters were announced back in February that year. And there were a lot of mixed reactions to like the new rules and how links worked. But yeah, they ended up proving to be a ridiculously broken summoning mechanic which no one asked for. Just like pendulums, especially since one of the rules was that any extra deck monster had to be special summoned to an extra monster zone, and we couldn't have multiple copies out, unless of course there was a link monster on the field first which had multiple arrows pointing to your main monster zones. And I feel like that did piss off a load of the player base, because yeah, this really messed up decks that relied heavily on either fusions, synchros, or exceeses, or both. And unlike the other summoning mechanics, links felt forced. It felt like Konami was forcing us to use them if we wanted to play these decks the usual way. It was just so annoying. Pendulums were kind of nerfed a little bit. Gone were the specific zones and were moved to the far right and far left spell and trap zone, meaning you could either play a spell or trap in that zone or set a pendulum scale. And of course you can only pendulum summon one pendulum monster from the extra deck, unless of course again you had a link monster with multiple arrows pointing downwards. Yeah, I felt like this rule did hurt my elemental heroes in a way, and it meant I couldn't spam out a load of fusions. Seriously, they just could not catch a break. Like, first Stratos got banned, then Super Poly got limited, and then banned, then this rule came along. Yeah, Master Rule 4 wasn't much better. And the funny thing is, which I did mention before, is that links were brought in to slow the game down, and deal with all these OTK and lockdown decks. But they didn't slow down shit. Like, they didn't solve anything, and we still had loads of OTK and lockdown decks, even some FTK strategies, which came up in the autumn of 2018, and Firewall Dragon would just get used and abused with these OTKs and FTKs. Like, I swear, Firewall Dragon just got the blame for everything back then. Thankfully, Master Rule 4 wouldn't have hurt my Dark Richician, Blue Eyes and Red Eyes decks that much, but yeah, it did hurt pretty much everything else I have. Actually, maybe not Magnet Warriors or Neos Wise Man, because those decks don't use the extra deck that much. But anyway, going back to the early summer, I decided to play my 3 God card decks in tournaments. Poker Knights, which had Obelisk the Tormentor, Gadgets, which had Slifer the Sky Dragon, and Magnet Warriors, which had the Winged Dragon of Ra. Now, originally, Poker Knights had Slifer and Gadgets had Obelisk, but then I switched them round to try and help each deck out and make it run better, and then ultimately, when we got the support from King's Court 4 years later, I switched them back. Yeah, I started with Poker Knights, which at the time was the weakest of the 3 and the hardest one to play. Of course, that being said, the Gem Knight's brilliant fusion engine helped out a lot back then, and it was kind of frustrating that brilliant fusion eventually did get banned, because it was just being used and abused in various meta decks, like up until some point in 2018, or was it 19? God, I don't even remember when Brilliant Fusion got banned. But anyway, I did alright, I guess. Not with Poker Knights, not great, but alright. I'm pretty sure I did win one match, but there were 2 losses I do remember, one of which was against Steve, playing Artifact Cosmo, and again against this new guy, Elliot, I think he was called, playing Light Swarms. Now I did manage to win game 1, actually thanks to Obelisk. Yeah, this is one of the most memorable moments from back then. Now he did get out Judgment Dragon. Actually, I'm trying to think. I know I spun something back with Castell, but I can't remember if it was a Garroth or a Judgment Dragon. Either way, I did have a Castell on the field with no materials, and he summoned Judgment Dragon, tried to nuke, and I activated Fiendish Chain to stop it in its tracks. Then I did one of the most epic plays ever. I went Brilliant Fusion, sent Lazuli, was it Lazuli? Yeah, Lazuli and Queen's Knight to make Seraphonite, used Lazuli to add back the Queen's Knight. Then for my additional normal summon, I normal summoned Queen's Knight, and then for the regular normal summon, I tributed Queen's Knight, Castell and Seraphonite for Obelisk, and just ran over Judgment Dragon, and he didn't draw anything to get rid of it. But then, of course, I got really unlucky in the following games. So he did win game 2, and in game 3 I was doing well. I went for big damage only to run into Mirror Force, and then he was able to win the game after that. So annoying. Like, Mirror Force is only fun when I use it. Yeah, it's a love-hate card for a reason, even though it's my second favourite trap. I mean, I love using it myself, but even after all these years, it's still really annoying when the opponent uses it against me. So, yeah, my score wasn't great, but I still had fun, and that was fine. A week later, I played with Gadgets. Now, this tournament was originally supposed to be a tag team tournament, and me and Bailey were supposed to team up. And he was using spirals at the time, but for some reason it got changed to a normal tournament at the last minute. Don't know why that was, but that was really annoying, because A, I was looking forward to some tag team action, and B, I didn't have a side deck, because obviously, like I said, because tag team tournament duels are best of 1 games, it means that there's no point having a side deck. So I didn't have one, and I feel like that left me at an unfair disadvantage. But yeah, I don't think my Gadgets fared much better than my Poker Knights. I lost against Steve, who was playing True King Dino, and then I went up against Joel, who was also playing True King Dino. And I was like, oh my god, why is everyone playing this deck? But I had more luck here. I was able to win that match. Don't remember how I did it, though. Couldn't say. But then I lost against Bailey and his spirals after that. And in a casual game, I don't remember whenabouts in 2017 this was, I faced Express Gaming's True King Dino deck with my Neospatians, wasn't sure how this would go down, but I actually managed to win against him. I wish I could remember how I did it, but it was very shocking that I was able to pull it off. So yeah, that's the third time now that my Neospatians beat a meta deck. First was Demise OTK, second was ABC's, and at that point it was True King Dino's turn to fall to Jaden's Monsters. Then after that I went away to France for a couple of weeks, so I wasn't able to attend any tournaments until July. So yeah, Magnet Warriors were the last to go. I think I won 2 out of 5 or 4 matches. Don't remember. I remember I did go up against 2 Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon decks. One was played by Timby, and I had some really bad luck in this one. Remember earlier how I said that Magnet Warriors are normally very consistent, and have been since they got additional support? Well, it didn't show in this match. I bricked in both games. I don't know how that happened, but it did, and I just scrubbed out big time. Yeah, that's something else I should have put on that list, where I was listing decks that shouldn't brick, but do anyway, and this happened with Magnet Warriors. Although, to be fair, I think that was the one and only time it ever bricked, like in all the games I've had with it. Like, why did it have to be in a tournament game? Like, if it was a casual game, it wouldn't have mattered, but that was just infuriating. I did beat the other Chaos Max player, though. I remember that. But I did lose against Synchrons, though, which was unfortunate. Speaking of, one thing I did like about Master Rule 4 was that there was pretty much no way to go into shooting Quasar Dragon or Cosmic Blazer Dragon. 2 of the most annoying synchro monsters in the game were made unplayable. I mean, now, there were probably very complex ways to go for it, but obviously it wouldn't have been easy to do back in Master Rule 4. But yeah, that was the last Master Rule 3 tournament we had. And then, yeah, the change happened a week later. And yeah, it did take a bit of getting used to. And I think at that point only 3 Link monsters were available to us until Code of the Duelist dropped. The Links being Decode Talker, Honeybot and Link Spider. And obviously Decode Talker was the best one, which everyone picked up. I picked one up for my Dark Magician deck, because why not? And I tried picking it up for other decks that could use it, including my Arcana Knights, Poker Knights, sorry. I didn't get one for Blue Eyes, Red Eyes and Elemental Heroes though, because I didn't think my Dragon decks would really need it. Plus, I wanted to keep my Elemental Hero extra deck / fusion deck purely fusions, just to keep it old school GX. Because as you know, I never play any other extra deck monsters in that deck. Never have and never want to. Elemental Heroes still coped fine. I mean, at least if I had one fusion on the board, I had another fusion play ready to go. Should I lose my fusion monster? Plus, if the opponent summoned a link with an arrow pointing to one of my zones, I could take advantage of that and use that zone so I could have 2 extra deck monsters. Then Code of the Duelist dropped, and I was trying to get hold of Firewall Dragon and Gaia Saber. Gaia Saber was another very generic link 3, and I just wanted to have Firewall Dragon. It was one of those cards that I just wanted to have, and when I did eventually get one, it went into my Dark Magician deck, even though Dark Magician isn't really designed to bring out Link 4s. Maybe some can nowadays, because there are some that do run Access Code Talker, but ideally Link spamming isn't really what the deck's meant to do. And speaking of Dark Magician, I was doing really well in tournaments at that point. I didn't win any with Dark Magician during that year, but I'd come close. In fact, there was one tournament where Wyvern Watch came down, where I ended up finishing second. I beat Kieran, who was playing Gokis. I then beat Steve-O, who was still playing Dinosaurs, but was also running Yang Zings in the deck. And I managed to win against him. And then in the final, I went up against Wyvern Watch, rather annoyingly, playing Cosmo. And I just struggled against him and lost. Because, yeah, Cosmo is just overwhelming, and yeah, my Dark Magician deck doesn't do well against monsters with targeting immunity. I mean, I have more ways to do it nowadays, but still, I just struggle. And then I'd just do similarly well in tournaments after that. Now, rather annoyingly, round about this point came the most infuriating decks in the meta at the time: Trick Stars and Pendulum Magicians, which ended up being 2 of my most hated decks in the entire game. Yeah, because Pendulum Magicians did nothing but either OTK or lock down my deck with Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, and sometimes there'd be another negate, at least in later builds, whereas Trick Stars are a Battle Burn OTK deck, which does nothing but use Light Stage and multiple copies of Reincarnation and Lycrus to just burn out my life points, just like that. And that's exactly what happened the very first time I went up against it. It wasn't in a tournament, it was in a casual game where I used my Elemental Heroes, and I have just hated Trick Stars ever since and wanted them to die in a fire and get destroyed by the ban list, but rather annoyingly it never did for some reason. Alright, sure, Light Stage got limited in 2019, but that was it. And Light Stage isn't even the problem. Lycrus and Reincarnation are, and I don't care what anyone says, those 2 cards should have been banned ages ago, because, yeah, fuck Trick Stars. Nobody likes them, no one wants to deal with them, they need to burn in hell. And yeah, it's been kind of an old arch nemesis deck ever since, even though I haven't played against it in a long time now, and quite frankly I never want to play against them again. Same can be said for a Pendulum Magician. That fucking deck does too many things that don't let anyone play. And it's typical. Like, I would have thought that Master Rule 4 would have nerfed pendulums and made it pointless to pick up Pendulum Evolution. I think that's the name of the set that came out before Lynx came out. But wasn't the case. They just became ridiculously overpowered, and yeah, it was the only pendulum deck that just absolutely dominated, and all the others were just power crept a lot, thanks to Master Rule 4. Nothing else came close until Endymion came along in 2019. But yeah, that would be the case with tournaments. Didn't have a lot of Trickstar matchups, but pretty much every time I went up against Pendulum Magicians, I just kept losing because I couldn't do shit against them. Like, oh yeah, and there was Time Pendulum Graph, which is just disruptive as fuck. Yeah, it's like no matter what I did, I just couldn't win against that deck. And going back to Trickstars, I did face them in a casual game with Dark Richician, and even though the reincarnation droll combo was done to me, despite some confusion with it, I was still able to win 2-1. Don't remember how I did it, but I did it, and I was pleased that I did it. And I remember getting a lot of likes and positive comments, because yeah, it was a recorded game, and people were going, "Yay! I hate Trickstars. Fuck them." Maybe not that extreme, but yeah, it's just a crowd-pleasing video. What can I say? You know, people are going to root for the fan favourite deck, because yeah, nobody likes Trickstars. Well, except Trickstar players themselves. Let's see, did anything else significant happen round about this time? Oh yeah, this was also... I forgot to mention something else. This was round about the time when Time Lords came into the game. Now, we did have Meteion and the 4K guy, which... what was it? Zephyroth? No. Zephyron? It's the 4K guy, which you can only special summon if you have 10 or more monsters in your graveyard, and it brings back a fairy, and that fairy has its effects negated, but it becomes 4,000. And funnily enough, it's the only Time Lord that doesn't fit with the theme. But anyway, those were the only ones we had, but we got all the others in Battles of Legend 1, and we'd get a few more a year later. And yeah, Time Lords ended up being another annoying burn deck, which I really don't like playing against. I mean, it was nowhere near as annoying as Trickstars. I mean, as annoying as Time Lords are, I would much rather play against Time Lords than Trickstars any day. But yeah, it was just infuriating. I mean, all they were a stally burn deck that does nothing but sit behind monsters that you can't destroy and do annoying burn damage. And yeah, like I said, Lazion for game is just cheap and dirty, and it's worse than Caius for game and Cowboy for game. In fact, in Royal Rumbles, later on, it ended up being too much of an easy win deck in those, and I'd be begging for Time Lords to get banned from Royals, but they never did. And I don't understand why, because, like, we specifically banned troll decks from Royals, and Time Lords are technically a troll deck. In fact, I could probably just say that they are now banned from Royals, but then again, nobody's playing them nowadays. Plus, I'm the only one who organises them nowadays, because a lot of the people who would play in Royals, like in the late 2010s, just either don't play anymore. I think it's just me and Weber's 5 that are the longest running players who've played in the Dead Universe Comics Royal Rumbles. But yes, I am still officially calling for Time Lords to be banned from them. That being said, I do have 2 decks that can beat them easily, Dark Magician and Rainbow Neos. My Blue Eyes deck was lucky enough to win against them somehow, although Galaxy Ice Tachyon Dragon helped. I won against them with Red Eyes somehow, don't remember how I did it, whereas everything else I had just really struggled. Alright, and speaking of decks that were banned from Royals, Trickstars got banned from Royals because it was too much of an easy win deck for Royal Rumbles. I mean, they can just get off their OTK right away and burn out everyone's life points before anyone has a chance to play. So yeah, that happened. Moving on to tournaments, I almost forgot something which Express Gaming wanted me to bring up, and that was the fact that in like late September that year, he held a tournament round his place, but obviously needed help running it, and then me, James, Carlton, Scott, Bailey, Kane, did I say James? I think I did. And James came over, and I decided to take my Destiny Heroes just for a bit of fun, and by that point it was running fusions, not just the Vision Heroes, but it had Dystopia, Dusktopia, and Dangerous. I don't remember a lot about my matchups. I only remember 2 games I had, or one of which was against Kane, who was playing Tellarknights. I can't for the life of me remember who won. He probably did, but I can't remember for sure. And then I went up against Express Gaming, who was playing Spirals, and yeah, he beat me with not too many problems, and then won the whole tournament. I don't know what everyone else played at the time. Yeah, I think I did still win at least one match. I don't remember for sure, but either way, didn't matter to me. Just wanted to have some fun with Destiny Heroes, and that was all that mattered. Um, that being said, round about this point, I kind of didn't want to carry on playing in tournaments because the meta was really annoying, especially Trick Stars and Pendulum Magician. Um, but then I got guilt tripped into playing, so I did, but I was at a disadvantage because I didn't have a side deck. But thankfully my opponents were nice to me and didn't side against me, so I'm very thankful for that. Although I did lose against Weber's 5 though, playing Pendulum Magicians rather annoyingly. But I think I did actually win a duel against him for once. So at least I took it to a third game, and I was like, okay, I might actually have a chance for once. I didn't, and then lost game 3, and then I was like, yeah, this is what I didn't want to play in tournaments anymore, because of this bullshit. I think things picked up after that, though. I did play against Marley, who was borrowing Weber's 5 Cyberdark deck, and won against him. I don't remember my other match. That reminds me of something else that I very nearly forgot to mention. Well, two things actually. By this point, Weber's 5 had actually started up his own YouTube channel. Well, it started in July. In fact, at this point, we're getting close to his 6th anniversary since he started YouTubing. One of his early videos was an endurance against me. Now, he only did have 3 decks, whereas I had quite a few, but he wanted to see if he could beat multiple decks anyway. He was playing Zodiacs at first. I actually forgot he did have that deck. At least yeah, it must have been Zodiacs, because it wasn't combined with his Cyberdarks at that point. Oh yeah, and back then I remember a variant of Cyberdarks he did play called Zack Attack, where it was a mixture of Zodiacs, ABCs, and Cyberdarks. Now, on one hand, it was a cool idea, but on the other, it had archetypes that I really don't like. Because, as you know, I hate ABCs with a fucking passion, because Dragon Buster exists, and I hated Zodiacs as well, because Trident exists, and Whiptail. I couldn't remember the name of the one that banishes stuff. Yeah, it was annoying. Oh, and we had this before the ban list dropped at that point. But yeah, I was really struggling with a lot of the decks I was using. I defeated it eventually with my Red Eyes Black Dragon deck, even though I think I was dropped to about 100. Then he brought in his Cyberdarks and easily defeated Red Eyes, and then I brought in Blue Eyes and won against him quite quickly. In fact, I remember bringing out Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon to take Dante, which he just so happened to have on the field. Trying to think how he made it. Don't remember for sure. Now, unfortunately, at this point, I couldn't do the cheeky combo that you do if Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon takes an Xyz, and that is change the Xyz, which is treated as Galaxy Eye Cypher Dragon, into full armour or Cypher Blade. But it didn't matter because I had enough on board for game. I believe at this point he did bring in his Pendulum Magician deck and beat Blue Eyes. Then I brought in Rainbow Neos, and somehow I was able to win against it, despite having an Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon on the field. I did have a way to play round the negate and bring out Rainbow Neos. But interestingly, he wasn't negating anything I did. Like, maybe he was waiting for Rainbow Neos and tried to negate that, but then again, there'd be no point, because if he let me bring Rainbow Neos out, then I wouldn't have used any of his effects right away. I would have attacked over the vortex so I could freely activate stuff. Of course, it didn't matter to me if he negated anything or not, because I did have multiple polymerizations in hand, so even if one of them got negated, I had another one ready to go. So yeah, I'll go a little bit back on what I said earlier, when I said I just couldn't win against that deck, but Rainbow Neos was able to win against it in an endurance, and that was the very first time I actually won an endurance. It was just incredible. At least this form of endurance. There was another one I actually did win back in 2011, but this actually was a team effort, as I was teamed up with Scapegoat User and Billsy, and we were up against Neo Nexodus, Lucky Wolf G and Kalo Shade, and my team won against them. But in terms of endurances where it's just two players using multiple decks against each other, that was the first time I won one all by myself. It was just long overdue after failing miserably in all the other ones I did. And then the ban list dropped, and yeah, I was so happy to see Levosagem get banned. Dismayed to see that Digusto Emerald got banned. Yeah, it was a sad day, and I blamed it on Zodiacs, as that deck was just using and abusing Digusto Emerald to recycle their main cards. Oh, speaking of, I think Broad Bull and Dryden were banned on this list as well, although it was argued that it wasn't because of Zodiacs, it was because of some combo with Firewall Dragon. Yeah, like I said, Firewall Dragon just got the blame for everything back then. I swear it was because of Zodiacs, because I hadn't heard anything about it being used with Firewall. Maybe it was banned for both reasons. After that, I remember a tournament where I played Dark Richician and played against two ABC decks and two Pendulum Magician decks, which was weird. Didn't have much variety of matchups, and interestingly, I did win against the ABC decks, which were played not by James and Hazel, but then I lost against both Pendulum Magician decks, one of which of course was being used by Weber's 5 and the other one being used by Martin. So yeah, that was unfortunate. But yeah, not as unfortunate as the last tournament of the year. Yeah, this was just one of the worst tournaments ever, at least for me. This was when I made two of the stupidest misplays ever. Yes, this was the one where I made that stupid misplay against Trickstars, which was the worst misplay ever, and the one against Pendulum Magician, which I ranked 10th on my list of top 10 worst misplays ever. So, yeah, you already know this story, but I'll briefly go over it again. It was just really annoying with the Trickstars, because I could have probably won against it. So yeah, I got OTK'd game 1, I did win game 2, and like I said, game 3 I probably could have won if I didn't mess up. As on my turn I had all 3 copies of Honeywater in my hand, which is a great side card. He activated Reincarnation and I chained Honeywater, but then I had the worst brain fart ever and discarded all 3 of them for some reason. Like, just thinking too much about avoiding damage. But that cost me the game, because if I hadn't have done that, I would have drawn into Effect Veiler and Dark Magician and used one of my face-down Eternal Souls to bring out Dark Magician. Then I would have flipped over the Eye of Timaeus, which I had set, and brought out Dark Magician the Dragon Knight. And then, provided he didn't do anything next turn, I could have got out Amulet Dragon or Dark Paladin by using my other Eye of Timaeus on Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, which I then would have brought back, and I would have had a board of beat sticks, which 2 of which being unaffected by card effects, and yeah, he wouldn't have had a way to break my board, not from what I could tell, and my matchups could have been different, and maybe I'd have had a better time of it. Yeah, I was just really upset and annoyed with myself that I messed up. Then I won a Dark Magician mirror match with Express Gaming, who rather unfortunately also lost against Trickstars. There seemed to be a reoccurring theme in round 1. Then I went up against the Pendulum Magician guy. It wasn't Weber's 5 or Martin, but yeah, this was when I made the wrong fusion against him. I made Dark Paladin, completely forgetting about the pendulum effect of Harmonizing Magician, when what I should have done was made Amulet Dragon, because at the very least I would have got rid of either Decode Talker or even Purple Poison, more likely Decode. And yeah, I just couldn't recover. And then I just dropped out of the tournament and didn't want to continue playing in tournaments. Like, even though I remember Steve saying, "Oh, but there's 1 round left," but I really didn't care. I just really didn't want to play in tournaments anymore. And I sure as hell didn't want to deal with Trickstars and Pendulum Magician anymore. So yeah, unfortunately, 2017 was left on a sour note, really. Oh yeah, and a week later there was a battle war where I wanted to have some fun and play Neospatians, But Weber's 5 brought in Pendulum Magician, and Express Gaming brought in a past format Dark World deck. And it's like, oh, come on. Like, you're really going to use meta and past meta against a fun deck? And yeah, Weber's 5 beat the both of us. And yeah, that is 2017 in a nutshell, so not the best of years, really. And yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned for the next part when I talk about 2018. Catch you later. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Dark Richician YouTube channel.